Hi everyone, Phil from Tech for Techs here. Today we're going to be looking at this from Cooler Master. It's their Master Box TD500 MESH. It's got sort of a crystalline effect on the side down here, so it's got like grooves cut into the tempered glass, and it's got also a nice pattern on the front mesh as well. It's got a recommended retail price of $79.99. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this case. First, apologies if you can hear what sounds like tapping noises. It's actually rain because it's an actual downpour outside at the moment. But let's have a closer look at the case. So this is what you get outside of the box. So doesn't look too bad for initial looks, to be honest with you, even with no RGB lights on or anything like that. So you've got that sort of mesh effect on the front where it's sort of parts of it go in and out and so forth, so it's sort of like a crystalline effect I think they're supposed to be trying to get at. And then you've got these grooves or along the side at angles which give it that, again, crystal look. The side is made out of tempered glass held on with 2 screws. The front is mainly plastic with that mesh, and then the rest of the sides are going to be your steel. And the front panel on here, you can see the 2 USB ports. You've got your power button, you've got a headphone microphone, and then the reset or RGB button depending on how you set it up. So it looks pretty straightforward. On the back of the case, so this is where you can fit a 120mm fan. You've also got those, it looks like 7 bays there. It doesn't give you vertical graphics card support, even though there is a bit of room there. They could potentially have put it in, but I understand they probably want to put that in one of their more higher end models. But in all honesty, it's got the room to add one in, easily there. Obviously, power supply goes in the bottom there. Your motherboard would go there. The top of the case, not much to see other than a big piece of mesh. Again, magnetic mesh. This is quite a common thing we're seeing on case these days. So that's on the top. It gives you enough room for a 360mm radiator up there. So that's plenty of room. Or you could put 2 140mm fans or 3 120s, whichever you prefer. On the bottom of the case, as you can see here, there's not a lot to see, but there are 2 screws here. This will allow you to remove the hard drive wall out of the machine. Obviously, you can't have 2 3.5mm hard drives in if you do, but it gives you extra room in there for your power supply, which is good, especially these days as most people are starting to move to M.2 drives and standard 2.5-inch SSDs rather than the old-fashioned traditional hard drive. But you have got the ability to use them if you wish. One of the downsides though is the mesh on the back here. These bits can be a pain to get out and then get them back in. You always spend 10 minutes trying to get it put back in properly after you've taken it out. I wish it was sort of like on a plastic tray where it would pull out and push back in, because in real reality, if you want to clean that, it's not easy to see. You can't just pull it out. You've got to turn your case upside down. When you've got all your components, and especially if you've got water cooling in there, it can get quite heavy and hard to see. So you've got to turn it upside down and see if it's dirty, then clean it. It'd be easy if it was just a drawer. You could slide in and out. So let's have a look at this side panel then. Let's get that off. And in the process of moving it as well, lifting it up, I've gone and pulled off that mesh underneath the power supply. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not a fan of those, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. So let's get this side off. It's held on by 2 thumb screws, which are a little tight, but they come off. There's 1 and 2. Nice to see they've reduced it from 4, but I would have still preferred where the screws would have screwed in the back like most cases do when they have a metal side, like back here. The case does actually have cutouts for screws there, but obviously it wouldn't really do anything. So obviously it's a repurposed case. So the glass then just lifts out, so it doesn't just fall, which is good. So it's sort of like on a hinge, so it's not just going to fall all over the floor and then break. Let's just peel off this nice piece of plastic, what's on the side. I know some of you like these. So you can see that effect properly of the glass. Well, that one is stuck on. Let's use super glue to stick that side of that on there. There we go. Finally get there. And as you can see the grooves in the glass. That's what they are. The grooves are on the outside of the glass, so you can actually feel them. There's no grooves on the inside, and it just gives it that slight artistic look to it. Again, it's supposed to look like crystal. In theory, it's just, to be honest, it looks like any other tempered glass with just grooves cut in it. But it's nice to have something different than just plain glass, which is the standard. The inside does have a black wall around the edges. That's to cover up all, obviously, the bits on the side where it connects up to make it look a bit neater, which is nice to do. The other side, again, 2 thumb screws. Again, they're in quite tight. Those don't actually have to come all the way out. They'll actually work as pulleys. There we go. And there's no sound dampening or anything. It's just a steel side. Okay, so let's have a look inside. First of all, I'm going to move that magnetic strip out of the way. So as you can see, that's the inside. You have got a power supply shroud here, which does have an opening in it, so you can actually see what make the power supply is and so forth. That's a good and a bad thing. I'd like to have the option of like some sort of cover to put over there if you wished, maybe with the Cooler Master logo on it, because if you've got a, let's say, a rubbish power supply for any reason, or a power supply where they're going to stuck the label upside down, or no label on at all, you've just got something what looks bad there. But something like a, I don't know, something like a rubber insert or plastic insert with Cooler Master logo on there might have looked pretty nice, but that's just for something then add in the future. Now you can add 2.5-inch SSDs directly onto here as well, so that's pretty good. It doesn't look like it's easy to remove. Now it's riveted in, so you cannot remove the shroud if you want to get rid of it. The shroud doesn't come all the way to the front, so it gives you plenty of room for the water cooling all the way from top to bottom. Again, 360mm on this, but you can actually fit 2, one on top, one on the front. That's actually pretty good cooling for a case of its price range. Most cases this price range, you're lucky to fit maybe a 240, 260 in the case. This you can actually fit 3 360s and maybe an extra 120 on the back if you're really feeling adventurous. It's got a nice big cutout there for the back of the motherboard, so you can fit things if you need to without taking the motherboard out of the case. It does have 3 holes, which you can probably see there, for your cable management. They do have rubber protectors on there to also hide the cables and stop them scratching, which is good. And these actually seem pretty good. They're not actually popping out. A lot of them I've come across in the past, these just pop out very easily and then pain to put back in. There's loads of cable tidy downs as well for use on the back of the case. We'll look at a closer look at that in a few minutes. Otherwise it looks pretty neat in there, and as you can see you've got all this room to play with. You can add all sorts in there without having an issue, so look pretty good for something like a Threadripper or even a top-end i9 processor, or something along that lines. But again, you could put a low-end machine in here and then you've got room to build if you wish. Now looking at the backside, you've got all these cable tie holes here, so that's plenty of room. At the bottom you've got your hard drive caddies here, so you've got 2 of them, but again you can remove that wall there by unscrewing the bottom. That bit comes out. Obviously these bits would have to come out then, but it gives you more room for cable management and power supply there if you wished. It comes with a bag of tricks. Looks like just cables. You have got an RGB controller in there as well, and that RGB controller you would connect up to your front panel here if you wanted to control the RGB through that rather than your motherboard. And otherwise you've got cable tidies and risers and bits and bobs like that, what you'd normally expect to see in a case. The cabling looks brilliant, apart from one thing. And Cooler Master, why do you do it to me? why oh why have you got a sachet packet looking cable connection on the HD audio? Why? All the others you're able to do, black booted, black cables all the way down, HD audio, looks a mess. Plug that in, let's just say you've got a black theme, everything, and then you've got that plugged into your motherboard, and it looks like you've got a rainbow flying into the side of your case. Don't want it. Want that black. If it was me building this case up for myself, I would find something to wrap that up with, or even paint or dye, or even get a marker pen and make that all black. There's no need for it. I've seen budget cases for 15-20 quid manage to get this bit blacked up. There's no excuse on the case which is closer to the £100 mark. All the other cables though, they've done it fine. USB's fine, RGB's fine, everything else, it's just unfortunately that HD audio. Sorry to go on about it, but it's one of my pet peeves. Otherwise, looks pretty good, to be honest with you. Nice, neat. There's no controller there though. The controller looks like it's built into the front panel. And the catches with those, let's have a look if it is going to be as I think. I'm guessing this just pulls off. If it doesn't, I just broke it. Yep, it does, just pulls off. Nice to see all the controls are actually on the chassis and not hanging on cables off the front panel. So, from what I can see, yeah, the RGB controller is actually built into the front panel, which... no, it's not. I lie. So the cables lead to this little box. It's only a small one. And then you'd plug that into either your motherboard, or you would plug it into this little controller here, which would then connect up to the front panel. So it's a little bit strange way of doing it. It doesn't stick to anything. There is no, unless there's any stickers in this bag, which I don't see any. It's not magnetic like we see on others. You can't add any more RGB lights to it, unless you've got a splitter and then added extra things to it. One thing that is nice though, they are using standard RGB cabling, so it's no special ones where it combines the fans and so forth, which makes things a bit of a pain. The fans themselves are again connected through a little controller, not a controller but a splitter. All three front fans will connect to the motherboard with one connector, so you don't have to worry about having 4 places to plug in all your fans to and so forth. You've got plenty of room there to do it. So the way you would connect up the RGB controller, again, all the fans are connected up to this little box, which then gives you 2 options, a gigabyte one or your standard 3-pin connection. Again, this is ARGB, not standard RGB, so make sure your motherboard supports it. If it doesn't, or you prefer, you have a little controller in the bag of tricks I've sent you. The first thing you need to do is connect that up to SATA connection on your power supply. Then you would connect up your 3-pin connector into there. And then you could just leave it like that and press that button to change the lights, but the catch is with doing that is that's inside the case. You're not going to be able to change the lights unless you open it up. So that's where you would then get the front panel reset switch, which is going to be one of these cables down here. Hard drive reset switch. You then plug that into there, and then use the reset button on the front of the case to change the RGB lighting. The fans they have got installed, all 3 of them are actually in sideways. They just say they are ARGB 1200, so I'm guessing that means obviously ARGB and the spin at 1200 RPM. So that's pretty good. They have put them in sideways. I'm guessing they've done that so the cables line up correctly and don't make a mess inside. But otherwise, you have got room to add more RGB fans if you wish and devices, but it won't go directly in the controller unless you get a splitter and put it in before the controller box. One thing I do like about this is the front panel. So let me get the front panel again. Again, no cables connected to it or anything like that, which is nice. But the also advantage is this mesh here, so it works as a dust filter as well. It's a bit finer than a normal front mesh, but it's not as fine as a dust filter, so it will let a little bit of dust in. But basically, if you were to wipe it down regularly, say once a month, you shouldn't have any issues. So it saves you having a thick mesh gauze on the front and then a really fine one behind the fans, so it gives you better airflow. Or in theory, we'll test the airflow in a little while, but it does look pretty good, and it does look unique from the design. I'm going to say whichever way you look at it, even without the lights off, it's got that crystal sort of look to it. Okay, so down to airflow and sound testing. Basics is sound testing. I always think it's one of those funny things because it's really hard to test how good the sound is on these things. When I say sound, how audible it is, like how loud the fans are and so on, because different cases have different amount of fans, different size fans, different RPM fans, and then depending on what components you put in more fans in. So a lot of the time, testing of how audible the actual case is not always the best. What I can say is, for a case, it is as audible as the next case with the same components, with the exception if you went down the route of something like a Be Quiet 600 model case, then yeah, it's got soundproofing in and stuff like that, it will help. But something like this won't have soundproofing in, it's got lots of fans, it's not going to be silent. Now, to go along with the actual airflow, just to show you, I'm guessing it's going to be pretty good. So here's our really scientific way of testing how good the airflow is. The fans are set at 50%, so they're not on full. I'm guessing if we put this in front of the case, it's going to suck all the smoke in, and hey presto, what a surprise it does. With those 3 fans on there, 120mm fans, with that mesh front as well, so there's nothing obstructing it. It's just basically getting sucked straight in. You don't have to worry about the cooling of this. It will cool as well as it possibly can, and you'll struggle to find a case what can cool any better for its size and especially in its price range. Okay, so in conclusion, we built the machine off. I've left the glass side off just for now, so you can see what it looks like on the inside, because obviously the lights in the studio reflect off of the tempered glass. But overall, pleasant experience building with it. I didn't have any issues. All the cutout points were where they should be, which is good. You've got plenty of room for all those radiators either across the top, on the front, or lots of fans if you want to. Okay, only comes with 3 fans on the front, none on the back, pre-installed, but it's easy to pick up a cheap or a decent RGB fan to stick it on the back, or potentially on the top if you wanted to, if you weren't using that for radiator space. The only negative I can really come across is that little sachet packet coloured cabling on the end of the audio jack, but otherwise everything else was pretty smooth and easy to do. I would like a little cover over this area. For example, in this case I'm using an AeroCool power supply in a Cooler Master case, because, well, Cooler Master haven't sent me any of their power supplies to test, so I'm using an AeroCool one instead. But it'd be nice to have something what you could stick over the top of there with the Cooler Master logo on if you wanted to, so it'd make everything look a bit more all branded the same, rather than one brand here, one brand there, and so forth. Otherwise, very interesting design. I think it's well worth the money, and I highly recommend this case.